Welcome to episode number 4 of the After Ascension Podcast. First thing I want to do is thank everyone who has submitted reviews and given feedback. I really appreciate it all, and I really appreciate all the emails that I've received explaining how this podcast and my experience has contributed to your own path. So I just wanted to once again say thank you, because I know how special the awakening process is, and I know how personal the experience is between you and your higher self. So if your higher self has led you to this podcast to hear my voice and my experience, that is really amazing to me, and I'm so excited to be able to contribute in whatever way I can. I know a lot of people are waking up right now, and I remember the beginning of my own awakening and how amazing that experience is, and what a shock to the system it actually was, to go outside and look at the stars, and it's like you're looking at them for the first time, to suddenly be excited to learn about history, and really what's being given to you is an outside looking in view. You are sort of locked into this vessel, and then suddenly one day you have this grand overview and the ability to see past some of the story that's been provided by whatever culture you found yourself in at that time. And one of the interesting things is many of us remember the exact moment that this little shift took place. And in my personal experience, I was able to look back and see how there was kind of a setup for this moment to happen. I was living my life full speed. I was always someone who believed in God and believed in a plan and that greater things were out there, but I never took the opportunity to stop and analyze truly what this experience is. So what happened to me was kind of a weird injury, which sucked at the time, but it created the opportunity for my higher self to step in and initiate this awakening process for me. And you know as well as I do, once this ball starts rolling, it's not going to stop for anything. And after a few weeks of noticing that, hey, something has really changed here, I started to look for ways to validate this experience. And after a few months had passed, I started to learn that there's a planetary ascension going on, and a lot of my brothers and sisters are waking up and having the same experience. So after acknowledging that this shift within myself was taking place, it still sort of felt strange to fully accept it. And that's when one night I decided to go out and look at the stars, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. A super bright ball of light showed itself to us, and it got so bright that we kind of had to squint and shield our eyes. So we're sitting here looking at this ball of light, and then suddenly it shoots away, and as it shoots away, it multiplied itself into 4 different ships, or whatever you want to call it. We call it a light ship. That's the only thing we knew how to describe it. But it was in that moment that I knew it was game on, and that there was something big to look forward to. And in your own awakening, maybe you realize it, maybe you don't, but what you actually experienced in that moment is called a walk-in. And what that means is that a higher vibrating version of yourself has stepped in, and the older survival-based version of you stepped away. And then you began the process of breaking down the programming and removing the filters that were stopping your higher aspect from coming through and feeding you information, feeding you truth and knowledge about why you're here, who you really are, and what you came to accomplish. And what this is all about, and what it's all leading back to, is the fact that you are God. And I know when you hear that, most likely your mind is jumping in and saying, yeah, but this and this and this and this and this. For right now, I just want you to tell it to be quiet. What's going to happen if you hear this truth and fully embrace it? Because right now, you're in a suit. The skin you see in the mirror, it's a trick. And everyone else you see throughout your day is you. You're plugged into a linear machine right now. The only thing that exists beyond this machine is oneness. Your goal right now should be to stop the mind chatter, issue yourself a wake-up call, and melt this illusion. This reality is something that you built. It's not what you are. You aren't a part of this. You are this. Stop walking around this vessel acting like everyone else is apart from you, because if that's what you're doing, you can only go as far as this operating system will take you. What your higher self is asking you to do, by any means necessary, is shift your perspective from one that is inside looking out to one that is outside looking in, and take a stand that nothing that comes your way is allowed to bring you out of that higher state of being. Because the world around you is always going to be there and it's going to do its thing. But when things happen, when you see things that you don't like, when you see things that maybe aren't as positive as you would like them to be, think to yourself, how would my higher self see this? And if it's your free choice to see from that perspective, your higher self's going to jump in and say, hey, funny you asked. And then you're going to be able to sit back and feel better about things because you've allowed this greater awareness to come through. So that is my challenge for you. How much higher consciousness can you hold? And that is a challenge. Can you have a confrontation with someone and never leave the heart space? Can you see something bad happen to someone else and remain in your peaceful, balanced state? Because that's what's being asked of you. There's a lot of things going on in this world right now that are a little bit dark and a little bit scary. The old energy is going to kick and scream the entire way out, for sure. And if you lose yourself in that, you're contributing in keeping that veil lifted. But if you can sit back and maintain that higher perspective, you're helping to lay that foundation of what's to come. And as we do this together, we manifest the peaceful paradise that we want our kids to live in. When you sit back and think of everything that humanity's been through, all the highs and lows, all of the stuff in our history that just seems so crazy, and yet we all decided to come anyway, shouldn't that tell you a little bit about how the other side sees what's going on here? When you can feel like the world's in turmoil and you listen to a Cryon channeling and hey, everything's peaceful, everything's great. What reason would you ever have to think otherwise? And as old souls, we are still human. That part of us is still there, and it's always going to be. But if you can accept that the human part of you is just part of this multi-dimensional team that is filled with all different kinds of parts of you, it then becomes a privilege to sit back and watch humanity do its thing. Stand above and appreciate and have patience for our family who are still learning and who are still making their way back home. There's something that happens during the ascension process that comes from some teachers out there who maybe, I don't want to say who are giving wrong information because I don't believe that, but sometimes it comes off as the mind is the enemy, and I certainly understand how it seems that way. There was actually a quote from Feel Good a few weeks ago. Forgive me if I butcher it, but it kind of went along the lines of, when the mind feeds you something negative, interview it. And I thought that was really brilliant because when you're in a space where you can process what the mind is feeding you through the heart, when something negative does come in, it's easy to, at that point, take a step back and say, okay, where did this come from? What program still exists here that I need to close? What trauma have I experienced that still needs to be healed? Because the mind and your thoughts are always going to be honest with you. Nothing is going to hide. It's going to give it to you straight. But if you can use that knowledge to identify things that need to be cleared, the way forward is going to be much more peaceful and much more balanced for you. Because one of the most common things I hear out in the community is that I'm trying to meditate, but I can't quiet my mind. I'm trying to be peaceful, but I can't still my mind. I get overrun by thoughts and I'm sucked in and distracted. And I think this is something that's really important to address, Because being able to still the mind and quiet the chatter is the way to get to the connection point. And sometimes when we're trying to reach this connection point, the mind cuts us off and kind of stops us in our tracks. But just know, if you're having this issue, that that's normal and that it's just one stop on the way to get to that connection point. So if you get to the point where the mind interjects and it stops you in your tracks, if you then respond with frustration that this happened, you just compound the issue. And this is really important to avoid, because getting to this connection point is where the healing is going to take place. Getting to this connection point is where the light body and the kundalini are going to ignite. And the real reunion with your higher self and your family can happen. So how I like to see it is, reaching this connection point, it's like a river. It's flowing, you're just going down. And then suddenly you reach a pool where the water is much slower. And maybe this is a metaphor for the mind interrupting you, discussing something that's happened during the day or some past event that is still bothering you. Well, you can sit in that whirlpool and spin in circles, or you can recognize that the mind has interrupted you and paddle your way through it. But the key is not to reach this little slower point in the river and get frustrated and give up. See the mind interrupting you as just part of the process. And if it doesn't get an emotional response for you, it will be more willing to let you proceed forward without interruption. And it's going to interrupt you less and less. And pretty soon you're going to be winding down this river, getting through these little blocks, getting through the 3D that's trying to interrupt. And then before you know it, you'll be at the connection point. But that doesn't mean you're done. That just means you're at the threshold. And in order to proceed forward from here into what's about to take place, is not expecting something to happen, because honestly, you can't really know. And what will happen is your expectations or your predetermined idea of maybe what's about to take place is going to create a filter that won't allow whatever it is to happen. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. But luckily that doesn't have to happen to you, so pay attention now. If you reach this point, all you have to do is sit and be in a state of appreciation, in a place of love and acknowledgement, with the truth that this is a beautiful experience and this is a beautiful existence, and that you are loved beyond measure. And this doorway will melt away from you. And if it doesn't, wake up, realign yourself without frustration, and try again. Because the truth is, you've had your walk-in experience, okay? That was your initial awakening. But are you ready? Are you prepared for the next one? Only your higher self knows that. Only your higher self knows when the perfect time for you to take on that mantle is. The only thing you can do is put yourself in a position to be successful, create the energy and high vibratory state that you have been trained to exist in, believe and know that your intent is carrying you to where you need to be. And when it all comes together, it will happen at exactly the right place in exactly the right time. And then from that point forward, you're going to exist with an open third eye, an activated kundalini, a true full meld with your Akashic records and your innate, higher functioning DNA, and the ability to help yourself in whatever way you see fit. But the real reward of this payoff will be teaching others to do the same, because honestly, humanity has waited a really long time to get to this point. And the angels and our extraterrestrial friends are celebrating every single moment of every single day that we have come to this point and that it's finally here. And they're celebrating because this is what it's all about. This is why all of this is happening. And this is why you're here in this body at this time to create this experience for yourself and for everyone else here. And maybe they don't pick it up in this lifetime, but they deserve the opportunity to experience this in the next one. So, Old Soul, I really hope that you let this idea sink in. That if you can overcome some obstacles, there's a grand prize waiting for you on the other side. And that it's no accident that you're here. And that you truly are free to create whatever it is you wish to experience. And that's going to conclude episode 4. Thank you again for being here. If you wish to contribute monetarily, there will be links in the description. If you want to email me and tell me about your experience, I would really appreciate that. And I hope this message that I've shared today has provided the spark that you need to continue your work. Because the galaxy, the universe, everyone is watching, everyone is cheering for you. Because they know you better than yourself, and they want you to be successful. They want you to be happy, healthy, and fulfilled in everything you do.